In 1973, Bill Bain, a rising star at BCG, has a bold vision for consulting, one that could change the game. But when his ideas were dismissed, he doesn't just walk away quietly. He makes a power move, taking some of BCG's top talent and key clients. And just like that, he turns a long-term mentor into a rival, ignites one of the fiercest battles in consulting, and sets off a chain reaction that completely changed the industry. Sounds pretty spicy, right? Hi everyone! Welcome back to my channel. My name is Elaine. I'm a consultant living in New York after grad school. And I've always wondered, why is consulting so intense? And why do people pride themselves on working 80-hour work weeks? What's with all the rivalry and drama? Well, it turns out it all goes back to a story like this. Today, we're going to talk about the rise of consulting and the billion-dollar power play behind the biggest players in consulting. Let's dive in. But first, we have to understand what exactly is consulting. You can think of consultants as business doctors. Instead of treating patients, they diagnose corporate problems and prescribe solutions. And just like medicine, you have doctors who are generalists and specialists. You also have consultants focused on general strategy or operations. Some focus on cutting costs and even taking down the competition. Pretty interesting, right? But when it comes to the mastermind, the fundamental architects behind this entire industry, we have to talk about MBB. At the top, we have MBB, and that is McKinsey, BCG, and Bain. You can think of them as the Hollywood A-listers of strategy consulting. Their entire brand is built on high-level thinking, bold ideas, and exclusive access to the world's largest CEOs. Then we have Big Four. That's Deloitte, PwC, EY, and KPMG. These firms started in accounting, but over time, they saw the gold mine in consulting, and they were like, wait a minute, we already advise large corporations on tax and audit, so we can advise them on strategy too. So they jumped in as well. As I was doing research, I was totally surprised by the amount of drama happened among these players. So for the purpose of time, we'll just focus on MBB today, and the story starts in early 1900s. During that time, American businesses are booming, but behind the scenes is total chaos. No financial planning, no structured management. Just a bunch of executives making gut decisions and hoping for the best. Then comes along James McKinsey, an accounting professor at University of Chicago, and he looks at this mess and thinks, I don't think this is how companies should be run. In 1926, he publishes The Budgetary Control, a book that basically says, hey, companies should really be run on actual data and not, vibes. After he published the book, he quickly realizes that people needed more than just words on paper. They needed people to actually go into their business, diagnose the problems, and provide solutions. So he starts a firm that does exactly that. That's how McKinsey & Company is born. At that time, no one had seen anything like this. Business leaders had no idea what a consultant even was. Fast forward nearly a century, McKinsey becomes the number one in consulting industry with over $10 billion in revenue. But how did a handful of obscure advisors grow into global powerhouses? From the beginning, McKinsey wasn't just giving advice, it was quietly shaping modern businesses and government. Some of their biggest plays, you might not even know McKinsey was behind it. For example, the White House Chief of Staff, one of the most powerful roles created in American politics because McKinsey thought the president needed a CEO-like structure to run the government. What about NASA? McKinsey helped to design its original operations and organization structure. Without McKinsey, NASA was a bunch of disconnected projects, and McKinsey turned it into a well-oiled machine. The last one, I bet you don't even notice, the barcode on your product, McKinsey worked with manufacturers to create it. McKinsey wasn't just any consulting firm, it was the shadow architect of the modern world. And it all started with one man's belief that businesses should run on logic and not instinct. As McKinsey solidified its position as the king of consulting, a new player was quietly rising, one who challenged McKinsey's dominance and revolutionized the industry. That brings us to our next guy, Bruce Henderson. While McKinsey was out here shaping the government and Fortune 500s, over in Tennessee, Bruce Henderson was carving his own path. He got a mechanical engineering degree from Vanderbilt and eventually made his way to Harvard Business School. But here's the twist though. He dropped out 90 days before graduation, no MBA, no diploma, all because he was way too eager to start working. Westinghouse Electric had given him an offer, and he spent the next 18 years climbing the corporate ladder, eventually made the youngest VP in the history of the company. So this guy wasn't just smart, he was also intense, one that probably worked on the weekends and made Gantt charts for fun. Which is probably why when he finally joins McKinsey, he was like, I can do better. To Bruce, McKinsey's model to build on long engagements and deep relationships were too old school. He wanted something faster, more analytical, and structured. So in 1963, he left McKinsey to create his own firm, Boston Consulting Group. And you can say that he completely changed how consulting worked at the time. Instead of selling expert advice, he opened the curtain into showing how they give advice by building frameworks. All of a sudden, companies had systems that they could use over and over again to guide decision making. You probably have heard the BCG growth share matrix. It's that 2x2 box that tells companies which products are cash cows and which ones they should kill. That was one of BCG's most famous frameworks. I know a lot of this sounds fundamental to us today, but you have to remember, back then, CEOs were really making decisions based on gut and feelings. This was the first time they had open frameworks to guide decision making. So this was pretty big back then. Just as McKinsey and BCG were battling who's the smartest in the room, another competition was quietly brewing right under BCG's nose. And this time, the threat came within. But before we get into that, if you're enjoying this deep dive on consulting wars, make sure you hit like and subscribe. It really helps my channel to grow. Now, let's talk about the Bain coup, how a protege became a rival. By the 1960s and early 1970s, BCG was booming under Bruce Henderson. They had built a reputation as a think tank of the business world. And one of the firm's brightest rising star was Bill Bain. Bain joined BCG in 1970 as a consultant and quickly became one of Bruce's closest protege. He was charismatic, ambitious, and had a special talent for building close relationship with clients, something that would later define his legacy. By the mid-1970s, Bain had a radical idea. Consulting shouldn't just be about coming up with brilliant strategies, it was about making sure they actually worked. He thought BCG's approach was too academic and theoretical. He also believed that instead of working with a dozen of clients all at once, consultants should go in on a few clients, forming deep and long partnerships instead of constantly chasing new projects. So Bain pitches his idea to Bruce Henderson, proposing that BCG should focus on a more hands-on execution-focused approach. But Bruce wasn't having it. That's when Bain did the unthinkable. He didn't just leave BCG, he took a chunk of the business with him. Imagine if you're Bruce Henderson. You personally mentored this person, you brought him into your closest circles, and now he's out there stealing your business. It wasn't just bad etiquette, it was a declaration of war. For Bruce, it wasn't just about losing business, it was about losing control. And for Bain, he made a move that could make or break his career. The consulting world was watching and the stakes couldn't have been higher. But despite all of this, Bain & Company thrived. And soon enough, Bain became a close competitor, especially when it comes to revenue per consultant, and the go-to firm for private equity deals, a market that BCG had largely ignored. So McKinsey had the power, BCG had the framework, and Bain had deep client relationships, and for a while, that was it. Then private equity started rising, and Bain saw the opportunity first, embedding them in billion-dollar deals. But they weren't the only one watching. Over in Big Four, EY also spotted the opportunity. And as we know in the consulting world, you don't always play fair. Instead of competing head-to-head, they poached Bain's people, copied their framework, and sold it for less. And just like that, Bain was no longer the only one dominating the private equity market. What happened next? That's for another time.